Ray also had great admiration for Ghatak. That's why he recommended him to the institute. Once he told me, Ghatak is someone who has cinema running in his veins. That was a great compliment he made.
People are starting to watch him, people are starting to talk about him, better prints are becoming available, which is all very wonderful. And I'm extremely pleased to see the reception, so to say, Ritwik Ghatak is getting in his 100th year.
100 years since his birth, Ritwik Ghatak still resists definition. He was not simply a filmmaker, but a voice torn between creation and collapse. His cinema was a wound tender, raw, restless, a mirror held to the fracture that partition and the division of Bengal left behind. People remember him for his films, but celebrate him for his defiance. He never built bridges between art and politics. He dissolved them. For him, cinema was not escape. It was confrontation. He made pain operatic and turned silence into sound. The whip crack that echoed through Mige Daka Thara was not punishment. It was memory, rhythm, rebellion. It taught generations that emotion could be political, that sound itself could wound. Even the dream world of Bollywood carries his fingerprints. Madhumati he wrote, and the reincarnations that followed, Kars to Om Shanti Om, all trace their roots back to his imagination. He showed that melodrama could be myth and myth could be modern. And when he taught at FTII Pune briefly, fiercely he showed his students not technique but turbulence. Among them were names that could shape Indian cinema for decades. Adur Gopalakrishnan, John Abraham, Mani Kaul, Kumar Shahani, Saeed Akhtar Mirza, Subhash Ghai, all of them in some way carried a flicker of that fire. And so, the question remains, what does Ritwik mean to those who came after? He remembers the teacher, not the legend. Adur's memories restore the man behind the myth, the teacher who broke rules, who taught through provocation, who lived his cinema as argument and faith.
I consider myself very lucky because I happen to be a student of Ritwik Ghatak. He came to the institute as the vice principal and professor of direction. That was my second year at the Film Institute. And I don't remember him teaching theory of cinema, but then what he did was to show his films and talk about how and why of he shot a particular sequence in a particular way, which lenses were used, why a particular angle was chosen, and composition, and so many things. Ghatak, as you know, is often compared with Ray, which is very unfair because they were both very great filmmakers, but they pursued different routes, Ghatak was somebody who was he was consumed by a passion for cinema. In fact, all-consuming passion, I must say. He had his favorites also amongst the filmmakers. He had great admiration for Ray. I still remember once he was showing Abarajido in the classroom, and while the sequence was on, he just pointed to that and said, "Look, here is great cinema." So that is the kind of admiration he had for Ray. They were never to be seen as adversaries as against the popular notion of them being adversaries. Ray also had great admiration for Ghatak. That's why he recommended him to the institute. Ray believed that once he told me, Ghatak is someone who has cinema running in his veins. That was a great compliment he made. And in fact, it was a good time for us students and also for Ghatak, I must say, because that is where he was really discovered. There was no serious discussion about his work. There is no serious appreciation of his work until he died. All these festivals woke up after his death and then started discovering him. This is what happened. This was the unfortunate thing that happened. And Ghatak never None of his films ever participated in any important festival, nor did he travel abroad any time. So this was very unfortunate that he died comparatively young compared to others at the age of 51 or 52. And he was in a pathetic condition with his alcoholism. There are stories about Ghatak turning alcoholic due to the difficult times he faced when he found there were no distributors, there is no cinemas showing this film, and to make the desired length of the film, he had to keep on adding frame by frame of each shot, etc. So to overcome that tedious job, he took to drinks. That's what the story is. Katak came from a family of very, very brilliant people. See, the famous, well-known writer, Mahashweta Devi, is his brother's daughter. And he has also a couple of well-known artists in his family. So his films had this very, very strange connection with theatre in terms of the one may call it melodrama, but then in terms of the high drama he used in his films, and also the use of sounds that he handled, all that. The three of them, Ray, Ghatak and Manal Sen, were the real holy trinity of Bengali cinema. What they did to Indian cinema has been absolutely great, and my generation of filmmakers have learned a lot because we were enthused, excited, and uh, uh, really creatively aroused by their works.
For others, Ghatak was as much a guiding light as a homecoming, a discovery of belonging through rupture. Anup Singh's debut, Ekti Nadir Naam, is a dedication to his spiritual mentor. In his words, cinema becomes a ritual of participation, not perfection. The filmmaker bleeds so that the audience may see.
The first Ritwik Ghatak film that I watched was at the Film and Television Institute of India as a student, and the film was Meghdha. As it happens now, and as it happened to me then, the film unnerved me. It threw me off center. But simultaneously, it brought me to a sense of home that I had not felt before. I realized what Ritwik Da was doing is that he had brought to the fore what stories usually hide by pushing images to relate to each other through rough, unexpected contrasts of size, distance, light and dark, by pushing sounds to clash and crescendo at various points. He was tearing open the story to the structure of hierarchy and power that we usually don't question and simply accept in a story. What was even more moving was that the filmmaker was challenging his own ways of thinking, his own beliefs, by encouraging multiple voices to speak in his films. And not only the grand sky that we see in his films, or the pot of steaming rice in Meghdha, or the resplendent nature in his films, but nature also indifferent to human suffering, but allowing us to speak. It was he who taught me that stories can be poison even while they pretend to heal. It was he who taught me that a film is a betrayal unless it encourages all other voices, space, time to speak.
Some inherit him not through film reels, but through fragments, essays, archives, stories told and retold. To the writer, Ghatak is not a memory, but an ongoing conversation, one that widens with each rediscovery, each restored frame.
I suppose at some level I've always wanted to do something with Ritwik Ghatak, something bigger than an essay here or an article there. a book perhaps, but I didn't really have any concrete ideas about what I wanted to do. But late last year, around the time the family was planning things to celebrate his birth centenary, the idea sort of struck me, and I came up with it immediately without really knowing who would contribute. I just came up with the idea, and getting the list of contributors in place required me to study a lot and read a lot to know who would be the best voices. Some of the best voices I had in mind didn't come through for whatever reason. Syed Mirza or Ira Bhaskar, Payal Kapadia, Ashish Rajityaksha perhaps. But as I spoke to more and more people, the original idea I had of 30 essays became 40, then it became 50. So obviously I got lots of people I hadn't thought about. And that's how Unmechanical happened, 50 essays. It's a very substantial book, and I think it covers most bases as far as Ritwik Ghatak is concerned. Now, Ritwik cinema is getting a lot of love now, which he probably didn't get when he was making these films, or even in these interim years when he was much celebrated by a certain very small section of filmmakers, and academic works were done on him. But in this lead up to his centenary, birth centenary, the love I'm seeing all around is wonderful to see. He's not Satyajit Ray. Satyajit Ray is so much more accessible, so much more easier to watch. However tough the subjects of his films might have been, he was much more easy to watch, where Ritwik is not. And that might be part of the reason why he wasn't perhaps as popular in his time or even later. There were other reasons also. But, people are starting to watch him, people are starting to talk about him, better prints are becoming available, which is all very wonderful. And I'm extremely pleased to see the reception, so to say, Ritwik Ghatak is getting in his 100th year. And I'm extremely glad that Unmechanical is playing a small role in making that happen.
To newer generations, Ghatak's rebellion feels instinctive, a language they were born speaking. Kanu Bell's films echo that idiom-rooted, restless, unapologetically Indian. Ghatak taught him that realism and emotions are not opposites, but twin truths.
With Ritwik Ghatak, I don't know really what to say. He's truly one of the modern masters. Such an Indian idiom, our storytelling done our way, with our sounds and our visuals. Whether it was Meghe Dhaka Tara or Subarna Rekha, or for that matter, Badi Theke Paliye, that is a personal favorite. I remember watching that film for the first time in film school in my first week, and it reminded me so much of my own childhood and early adulthood. That film, that I found an instant kinship with his cinema. He's personally one of my favorite filmmakers in the whole wide world.
For some, discovering Ghatak feels like encountering freedom itself. In his defiance, they find permission to invent, to err, to reject imported grammars and invent their own.
As a filmmaker, what I personally believe in, following the mind of a maker than a craft of a maker. So the mind of Ghatak, which I find very similar to my other favorite artists like Van Gogh, like Ramkinkar Bej or Vibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay, the freedom and the audacious attitude towards their creation. So was Ghatak for me. I didn't get inspired by image or sound per se, but with the very idea of cinema as medium. Ghatak never followed Hollywood or French wave, New Wave, or any other American or European cinematic movement. Ghatak created his own universe. However, my film Manik Babur Megh, when it got released, several people brought a parallel with Meghe Dhaka Tara, and also framings of Meghe Dhaka Tara or Titash and different films of his, which was obviously very inspiring. And then the word Megh was there, of course. That's why another probably influence of the reference came. And my film was also black and white. In spirit, of course, if asked, when I wrote Manik Babur Megh, one thing was in mind, which I learned from Ghatak, again going back to the root of the idea of Ghatak, which is you don't need to really follow any grammar, you can make your own.
And finally, there are those who listen to him more than they watch him, because Ghatak believed that sound reached the soul faster than sight, that the ear could carry pain the eye refused to see.
So Ritwik Ghatak used to say that ears are more sensitive than eyes, and because film is an audio visual medium, and he always gave more importance to the sound because ears are more sensitive. और वो कहते थे कि कान का सुना आत्मा में पहुंचता है, and we can clearly see this in his filmography, like in Komal Gandhar. We see a shot of a train track and we hear a lot of human voices, but we don't see anyone. And like in Megha Tara, Neeta is sitting and she's staring at the mountains, and we hear many types of sounds, many times types of sounds coming from the mountains, and he usually never used fade in or fade out in sound. He many times he just cut straight. And my favorite film is, I think, Komal Gandhar or Swarnrekha.
In the cracked frames of Nike Dakatara, in the cries of Shubarna Rekha, in the forgotten corridors of the Film Institute, Ritwik Ghatak still speaks not as a ghost, but as conscience. A century later, as we celebrate the master filmmaker, his cinema reminds us to feel deeply is itself a form of rebellion.
ভারতে উপজাতীয়দের উপরে প্রথম তথ্যচিত্র করেন ঋত্বিক ঘটক। বিহার কো আদিবাসী ইজ বিহার। এবং তারপরই 1956 সালে সেই বিখ্যাত ছবি অযান্ত্রিক। ছবিটা দেখলে দেখবেন যে ছবিটায়, আমি ছবিটা নিয়ে কথা বলছি না, ছবিটায় মূল গল্পে যা কোথাও ছিল না সেই রকম একটা জায়গা। ঋত্বিকের বাঙালিয়ানা নিয়ে আমরা সবচেয়ে কথা বলি, কিন্তু ছবির লোকেশন বাংলায় না, বিহারে, এখন যেটা ঝাড়খণ্ড, এই অঞ্চলটা, তখন তো ঝাড়খণ্ড ছিল না। এমনকি ঝাড়খণ্ডের লোকেরা হিন্দিও বলছেন, তার খুলকু ভাষা, ওঁরা উপজাতির যা মূল ভাষা, সেই ভাষায় কথা বলছেন। ঋত্বিক সেই ভাষাকে বদল করেননি, একেবারে ওই ভাষার সংলাপ। এটা যে কত বড় শ্রদ্ধা উত্তর স্বাধীনতার যুগে, যখন আদিবাসীদের, এই তথাকথিতভাবে উপজাতীয়দের অধিকার এবং তাদের স্বাভিমান বোধ সম্বন্ধে কোনো কথা বলা হতো না, এটা প্রকাশ্য জনমাধ্যমে একটা অপ্রচলিত ভাষাকে অত গুরুত্ব দিয়ে দেখানো, একটা অজানা জীবনকে অত গুরুত্ব দিয়ে দেখানো।
He lived recklessly, burning through film and friendship, through faith and failure. Yet, he left behind no school, no imitators, only believers. He taught that cinema must never be comfortable, that it must stare back at history and ask who speaks and who is silenced.